that Michael Caine over there? Getting the...
Where? No, seriously, where?
He's putting butter on his popcorn. Who is it? That's got to be Michael Caine.
That's not Michael Caine. It's my neighbour Godfrey, who looks very, very slightly like Michael Caine if you squint.
I was just kidding you. I was taking the piss, as they say over there. I love this game. It's called Mistaken Star. And what I do is I sit down and I'm with my wife or with some friends at a movie or a concert or something like that. I'll find someone in the crowd, then I'll sort of point in their direction and say, hey, isn't that? And then you insert the name of a famous actor. And then your friend says, no, that's not Michael Caine, just like you did. But it ends up being very, very fun. I have a very simple mind, so it's fun for me.
How about, okay, here we go. I can play this. Over there, that looks like somebody I've seen in a movie. That, in fact, I think that looks a hell of a lot like Stephanie Ray Liedlich.
Oh, James, I'm so sorry. You haven't heard. Stephanie Ray Liedlich has passed on to another world.
No, really?
But who you see is none other than Steven Ray Liedlich, who still is and always has been, without question, the greatest single event cross-dressing upright guitarist in the world.
Wow, thank you for that introduction. And I hope that Stephanie Ray Liedlich is still alive and well someplace. But right now you have just Steven Ray Liedlich.
Now, this is pretty exciting because I have watched Andrew's debut film, Debutante, a couple of weeks ago. So I feel, Steve, like I feel like I know you already. It's quite exciting to meet somebody that you've only seen on screen, and now suddenly you're speaking to them face to face. Welcome to the Popcorn Counter.
Thank you, James. Thank you for inviting me onto the Popcorn Counter podcast.
I'm sorry the food isn't better.
Yeah. We should start with an apology, I think. Do you mind? Do you mind if I start with an apology?
Oh, yeah. That's a story of our lives, isn't it?
We've already recorded an interview with Michael Primmer, who was editing on the film, and we apologized to him. So I think we owe Steve an apology as well for capturing that little bit of your life and Stephanie's life on film. If we had to destroy any and all traces of it, it wouldn't be very difficult because it's really not that easy to find. And a couple of us have it on our computers, and it is posted if anyone wants to see it on the Two Real Cinema Club YouTube site, I believe, as well. James,
it is. It's on YouTube for anyone and everyone to see in all eternity now.
But Steve, you were a very good egg for playing not one but two roles and sharing your music with everyone. So apologies to you at the outset, but
no apologies. I knew that I would not be able to run for political office after making that movie. But this is, Andres, this is the 25th anniversary, is that right?
So yeah, we're a little bit beyond it. We've debuted around June 19 of 1998. Yes! Woo! So that would be 25 years. 25 years and still getting older. And not necessarily any better, but we've had a great time talking to the Prim about it. We've watched it. You've watched it. James has watched it. So we're all up to date on it. And yeah, we thought we'd just sort of bat around a conversation about what the experience was like, and how you're doing and what you're up to these days. And
I've got a short list of questions, but excuse me feeling starstruck and giggly here. The first question is when Andres explained what the film was, and he's kind of it's a mockumentary and there's some gags and it's about this guy's guitarist. What I didn't realize was how much of the film is it's you playing guitar. And I have never seen someone play guitar quite like that. So you call it, is it vertical guitar? It's upright guitar? What do you call it?
Exactly. I call it upright guitar. And
how did you start playing the guitar like that?
It's something that I just came up with after music school. I actually played trombone all through music school. So that's my first instrument. And after music school, I was just experimenting with my brother's guitar one day, and I tuned it differently. I tuned it in fifths, like a cello, and I was tapping harmonics on the strings. It was really more of an experiment in physics or in sound. And one thing led to another, and I just started writing songs in that fashion. But I was holding the guitar upright like a cello, between my legs, but on a stool. And I just found myself doing that for hours and hours, and eventually one thing led to another, and I was writing songs like that and using multiple different tunings. So it's a different approach but I like to think it's somewhat accessible.
It means something to you.
Now, for your listening audience out there, the premise of this film, Debutante, I'll just give a brief rundown, but as a singer-songwriter in Boulder, Colorado, one night I dressed in drag and performed for a women's songwriters night. And Andres had the foresight to agree to film this. And I liked that idea because I wanted that documented of me playing in drag. But he also took that one step further and had the vision of creating this whole mockumentary, this mock documentary about Steven Ray Liedlich, myself, and my somewhat truthful, somewhat fictitious life, and an alter ego named Stephanie Ray Liedlich, who performed that night in drag.
How did you guys first meet? Was it through the film? Did you guys know each other before this?
No, we worked together at the Boulder Philharmonic Orchestra. So we were both in an office in a nonprofit group, and we were in the business of putting on concerts, orchestral concerts. But it was a really great community, and we were actually situated in a place called the Dairy Center for the Arts. It was literally a place where they used to move. Oh, we were talking about transport earlier. Ooh, connection to past. Transporting milk. I believe the trucks would get in there and somehow it got loaded up. This was
that's literally dairy, meaning like milk from cows. Not I for a moment there I thought it was dairy, meaning that region of Ireland, and it was a kind of ethnic Irish
good
thing.
guess, but no, it's really milk. It was a building that I think in earlier times it was the outskirts of the city. So it's where the trucks would either transfer the milk somehow or just pick it up and then move it on. I don't know exactly what happened there, but it was a very interesting building, and we got space in there. They turned it into like an arts center. But in that arts center was a local public access television station. So I started taking classes and getting involved with the TV station, and that meant I could get a camera. So when he said he was going to perform for Where's Richard, which is this women's songwriting circle, I want to use this expression carefully, champing at the bit. I understand that the expression is not chomping at the bit, it's champing at the bit. So I was champing at the bit. I said, God, that's just gold. So I got a camera, and I didn't have a ton of experience working the camera at that time, and it definitely shows in the film, but we did manage to document it. And one thing that came up a lot, I think, when we were talking to Primer, and one thing that I've thought about a lot is that for me, this film, as James said earlier, it's really about the songs. There's so much music in there, and I really feel like I kind of wrecked it. And just as a concert film or a real documentary probably would have been better, but it's just wisely, I think I did start to structure the film around the songs, because that's really the strength of the material. And then we just had a lot of fun, and I think we went too far in some places, but when we scripted it out, it became this bigger thing. But I still to this day I feel like the best thing is the songs and Steve's music, and at times it gets a little slavish to the cross-dressing premise, and I think that interferes a little bit, but it leads me to one question for you following up, Stephen. I know you performed on the trombone originally, but I believe you'd done some scoring for films, or that's what you're studying. But had you written songs on piano or trombone before you started writing songs on the upright guitar?
I did, yeah. I did write music on piano when I was in college. I went to Berkeley School in Boston and got a degree in film scoring, but I never did anything. I never did any film scoring after college. All my film scoring happened really at the college level. But what it what I did take away from that experience is just learning how to create, learning how to write music, which is something I love to do. And so that was really helpful for me to learn at Berklee. And so when I started playing guitar, I had that composition mindset, and I just started applying that to the guitar, which for me was a new instrument at that time.
And you definitely use it in a new way too. I think one thing that always struck me was the percussiveness of your playing, and I played drums along to you, and I just love that percussive element that you brought to the guitar, which you don't hear very often. You're
right, Andres. I do consider it to be a rhythm guitar. I cannot play a lead solo to save my life on guitar, but I'm a rhythm guitarist.
And I hope, are you still playing regularly now? You picking up the guitar every day?
No, I don't play. I play so seldomly now. I certainly don't play out live. I did actually. I did 1 year ago. I did perform 2 songs with a coworker at an employee talent show.
Awesome.
I work at a hospital in Middletown, Connecticut, and I work on the philanthropy team. So part of my job is to run fundraising events.
Awesome.
So it was part of my job to coordinate and manage an employee talent show to raise funds for our hospital. And I knew the VP of my department, she played guitar. So we decided to do a couple songs together, but we wanted to do crowd pleasers, right? We did Neil Diamond's Sweet Caroline and Buddy Holly's Not Fade Away. We didn't do any originals, do anything too out there. So I had a lot of fun with that, just playing the guitar again in front of people. But I don't practice very much. I practice very rarely. Just last year, I bought my first electric guitar last summer. So I've been exploring that a little bit, really just experimenting with the gadgets and the sounds that you can make with an electric guitar versus an acoustic guitar, what I've been playing for, since the early 90s.
And your gig last year, was that upright guitar?
Yeah, I held the guitar upright.
Yeah.
And my coworker Laura, she's a fine guitarist, and she gave like the Buddy Holly song like the edge and the rock that it needed.
Are you playing the electric in upright fashion as well?
Yes, yeah, a little of both. Yeah.
Wow. And what did you buy for a guitar?
I found this custom-made guitar, and I was in the market for a Ibanez Gem, which is Steve Vai's signature guitar.
Yeah.
And it has these guitars are very unique if you've ever seen one. There's a handle on it. You can just like stick your hand in the guitar and pick it up. But what I found on Craigslist was a pre-Ibanez Gem. The Gem was on sale. And so this was made by Steve Vai's guitar maker in Long Island back in the early 90s. So it's a custom-made guitar that's 30 years old that I found for sale. It's one of a kind. It's a beautiful purple guitar. And so I drove 3 hours to Tannersville, Pennsylvania to pick up this guitar last July. But I love it. It's fun for me to explore the electric guitar.
It's that it reminds me of that famous saying, it's not possible to own too many guitars. But if you are only going to buy one electric guitar, then you have to buy a special one, don't you? You're going to lavish all your attention on one guitar, make sure it's the right one.
She walked into the night with an alibi. She walked into the night without a goodbye. The storm fell like a summer rain.
There's a couple of things I want to pick up from what you guys were saying earlier. Andres, you were kind of saying about when you scripted the film out, and it started to take on a little bit more of a shape. And I would love to know how much of the dialogue in the film is improvised, because if anybody listening has watched it, it feels very fresh. It doesn't feel scripted. It feels kind of loose and improvised and very authentic. And I'm surprised to hear you mention this notion of a script, and how much of what you said was pre-prepared and how much of it was just off the cuff.
Probably somewhere around 50-50.
Okay.
I definitely felt like we needed to build up to the climactic shot, which is ridiculous. It's just Steven taking a bustier out of his shirt, but it gave us the whole coming out kind of thing. And I was inspired by some of these 60 Minutes. It's a American news journalism program where interviews get really intense with famous people and politicians and whatnot. So, a lot of the interviews, I think, were pretty well scripted. I felt like the people who did the best were Nino Polito, who plays Steve's manager, which I think just gives a knockout performance. And he is mostly, I think there were a couple lines that we kind of wanted him to stumble on, but his was mostly improvised. And I think he just nailed it. I think he just wanted to be that LA producer type, and who's just as interested in himself as he is in his artists.
He's great because I'm great. He has a great talent in him and incredibly great talent behind him.
So I think he was mostly improvised. And another performance I just love is Libby Kirkpatrick, who hosted the night. And she's the only, I think, other than there's a little bit where our band, the Unkeys, is playing in there. But I think the only other musician that we feature on screen is Libby. And she has this wonderful song where it matches the whole theme of Debutante, I think, because she says, in my body I feel dissonant and strange, and it's time to rearrange. And it's maybe a 15 or 20 second spot, and she just nails it. But then in her interviews, a lot of that stuff was just, if there was something happening before or after a show, a couple of things we definitely scripted, and some of the interviews with the musicians are more scripted. But we're also just occasionally getting some ad-lib stuff. The stuff that happened in that radio, that University of Colorado radio interview, that was just totally Steve kind of vamping with them, and I think that's a great moment. So, ironically, the stuff that I prepared for more, I feel, didn't come across as genuine. And, that's one thing I definitely learned about is that, especially when you're working with non-actors, it's hard to give them some lines that aren't coming natural to them. So I wish I had given people more range, I guess, but I wanted to get it into some sort of structured story. I felt like there was some stuff that we needed to have. So I would say about 50-50. I mean, I definitely had an early document that I had just put together just so that I had something to work from. And then it was just a matter of finding footage. And it's kind of like a found footage film in many ways because, again, the songs definitely structure the entire project.
I think what's fascinating is that the whole project, the whole film came out of this notion that Steve was going to play this women-only kind of open mic type night. Because when you first explained to me what the film was, before I saw it, I was kind of a little bit worried. It's 25 years on now. Are the kind of gender politics of this film going to look a little bit creaky? Is it going to look more like Benny Hill rather than something that that will play today? But and then having seen the film, it's quite the opposite. It's kind of sweet and playful, isn't it? And there's something quite genuine and sort of liberating about like the look on Steve's face when he gets to put on a dress and actually I'm quite enjoying this and this is cool and this is fun. It kind of comes across as actually quite sweet. I think it plays well into a modern audience. When you were there on the night, Steve, I know I'm asking you about stuff that happened 25 years ago. What was it like in the real world playing this Where's Richard gig?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I don't remember a lot about, especially when I was on stage, I was just very focused on my guitar playing. So on stage, I don't remember a lot, but before and after I do. Just gathering around in the audience. This took place at a coffee house, Penny Lane in Boulder, which is no longer there, but it was a popular music venue and coffee house in Boulder at the time. But I was very nervous, but I was also kind of excited at the same time. And I remember even after the show was over, I went out to a bar with a few friends. I'm sure Andres was there, that we all went out for beers afterwards down the street at a bar. And I was fully dressed as Stephanie Ray Liedlich with a blonde wig and a black dress and high heels in this bar with all my makeup on. And, nobody said anything to me walking around Boulder like that. One of our friends did overhear a conversation at the bar. There was one guy sitting at the bar who was overheard saying, "I am completely confident in my sexuality." That they were having a conversation about this drag queen that was over here, but they wouldn't say, they didn't approach me or say anything to me about it. So, I had a lot of fun with it. It was, I think it was kind of a challenge for me when I suggested the idea to Libby Kirkpatrick for me to participate in this female songwriters night. I asked her, what if I dress in drag? Would you let me play for Where's Richard? And without a beat, she just said, "Sure, go ahead." And she was almost calling my bluff, almost as a dare. And I didn't want to back down from that dare. And I talked to her I talked to her further about it. And I talked about the songs that I'd be interested in playing, kind of like the songs that had gender issues in it. And so she was on board. And when I realized that she was serious about letting me play for that, then it was game on.
Fire hill. I ain't very different, but I ain't quite the same. Just don't be there too surprised we play the crying game. Yes, 'cause I'm a drag queen cowgirl. I ride a stallion in the skies. Yes, I'm a drag queen cowgirl. Prettiest girl in Jackson Hole.
Yeah, and it was an event. I remember it being a very full house. I mean, Penny Lane it's a coffee shop, not a bar, but it was known for, I think, a lot of acts had gone through in there. I rumored that Nirvana had played there once. It was this place where a lot of groups that were just up and coming and doing their first tours would hit this coffee shop, and they rarely got paid or anything like that. So it was more of a prestige thing because it was such an institution, and that place was full that night. And yeah, it didn't seem like anyone had a problem with it. And, thinking on it with today's perspectives, I'm not sure if people would think, oh, he's co-opting this night. But at the time, everyone just loved it. It was just something different, and it was a great performance. I think a lot of the film comes from that one performance, in part because that's the only time Steve cross-dressed and sang. So we had to use a lot of that material. But and your song selections that night were pretty good. You had Easy Meat was on the list, and Papa Don't Preach was on the list. So you had songs, I think, that lent themselves towards the evening as well.
It feels almost like capturing a little moment in history. It is a terrific performance.
Yeah.
Stevie, well, you certainly were, I'm sure you still are, a magnetic performer, very watchable. It's such a pleasure to watch. There is something we talked about this to Mike a little bit as well, about watching Debutante, that it gave me an extremely powerful 90s nostalgia hit. This kind of pleasurable wave of looking back. Everybody in the film looks like they've just stepped out of a Hal Hartley movie, if you've seen any of his films. In the kind of early 90s, I had a friend who was also called Steve, who had much the same haircut that you did back then. And it just it took me straight back. It's amazing. Just like the clothes, the hair, the music, like the bars.
You're right. It did capture a moment in history, like just scenery around Boulder, and it captured a moment in my life. And I have to admit that watching this film, there's so many cringe-worthy moments for me, like the bad jokes, the sophomorish humor. It just makes me groan, and I almost wish, we could do it over again. I have to say, another part that really jumps out for me, like here I am looking back at my life 20 years ago, was the amount of alcohol that was involved, right? The first 10 minutes of the film talk about all this beer that I'm drinking. I drank beer in the morning, and I did have a problem with alcohol back then, and so here it is, like I'm sitting here with 18 years of sobriety, looking back on this film, wondering what the heck was I doing back then, and it's almost like a little painful for me to watch.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of scenes there where I talk too casually about drinking in the morning. But something that's true for me, and I think others that drink too much, is that practicing alcoholics, they experience this immaturity, this arrested development, and like stunted emotional growth. And I have to say, I'm a little bit like that. Through my 20s and 30s, I probably had the mentality of a 17-year-old boy, but it wasn't until I found sobriety that I really started acting like a mature adult. And so looking back on this film as a mature adult, the stupid jokes aren't so funny anymore.
Yeah.
It's my stupid jokes, I should say, and and there's one real moment of truth for me. Like a lot of the stuff that I said in that film, I was probably hamming it up for the camera a little bit, or it was scripted. But there's a moment of truth where post gig, Andres is interviewing me. It's a gig in Denver. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not the drag gig, but a gig in Denver. And I say, I'm recovering from 2 hangovers today, one in the morning and one this afternoon. Yeah. And that actually happened. Like that was truth. And if that wasn't a red flag for me at that time, that my life is so dysfunctional that I'm going through 2 hangovers in one day, right? It didn't occur to me that at that time that that's a problem. But looking back at it now, I realize that's such a red flag that I'm happy to look back at this film now and all that drinking with 18 years of sobriety.
Yes, here. Well said, and congratulations to you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because a lot of people can't do that, what you've just done. So I was going to say, I'm sorry for capturing that. But at the same time, it lends this authenticity to the project in the sense that if you've ever seen all those behind the music documentaries where the rock stars hit rock bottom and then they turn themselves around. And I mean, I usually think of those as being complete nonsense, but it's sort of the same story for you, that you were at that time sort of unacknowledged as an alcoholic, and then you've overcome it, and you've reached 18 years of sober, and that's just it makes it feel like one of those documentaries that I saw about all the bands that were nearly driven apart by debauchery. So it lends Debutante this bizarre authenticity of it's like a rocker's lifestyle that you're living.
And then, I mean, one of the first things that they taught us about because Andrews and I met at film school, and one of the first things they talked about when trying to teach us how to write movies, and one of the most important lessons of any kind of writing, I think, was to seek out authenticity, because it's absolutely that's the foundation of any good story, and stories which aren't authentic, you're building on shaky foundations. So to see this kind of confessional authenticity on screen is probably where a great deal of the power of the film comes from. So it's not a coincidence, I think, that this is a time when you had your own challenges, but facing those or revealing those on screen is part of what makes the film do the magic that it does. These days, it's easier than ever to release music. You can put an EP out on Bandcamp over a weekend, and things are universally available. Have you still got tapes? Have you still got masters and CDs and recordings of yourself from back then?
I do, and I haven't done anything with them to put them out on social media, and so that's something I'd like to do and pick that back up again to just to put it out there in the universe. But that's always been in the back of my mind, especially in the social media age, but I just have not done that yet. It's just not where my life is at right now, but it's something that I would like to do.
There's something kind of just so unique and kinetic about your style. It's a shame if it doesn't get a wider audience, because having watched Debutante, I'm kind of surprised that there aren't more guitarists playing in this style, because there's something so kind of natural and rhythmic about it. It's it's just beautiful. I think it's pretty remarkable, actually.
Yeah, it does feel natural for me to hold a guitar like that, just holding it upright like a cello. It feels more normal to me than the regular way to hold the guitar. So it works for me.
Good evening, Penny Lane. My name is Stephanie Ray Liedlich. And I would like to start this evening out with a little foreplay.
Speaking of movies, just a question for you as a composer. I mean, as someone who's studied scoring, how do you listen to music in films? Do you pay more attention to music than the average person might, or are you listening for certain themes that identify characters or anything like that? What occurs to you when you're listening to film music?
What I had learned at music school about film music is that the best film music is like you don't even notice it, right? Because you're just so drawn into the drama that the music just creeps in there into your subconsciousness. Yeah. So it's almost like I have to go back and watch a film a second time to then pay attention to the music and just purely enjoy the film on its merits to the first time I see it. But yeah, there's music that acts on that level, on a cinematic level. And of course, there's music. There's musicals, like Broadway musicals for film, or rock concerts. But James, you're a film guy. Tell me about like what films work for you. Like what are your favorite films that have a strong musical element to it?
Well, I was going to say at the weekend we watched. We're on a kind of Indiana Jones tip at the moment. And so I kind of sat down with the children. We watched Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is not the best Indiana Jones movie, but actually it was better than I remember it. It's kind of still a lot of good fun. And the children both really enjoyed it. And then, they went off to bed, as is their privilege, while Dad stayed up to clean up the kitchen. And so I put my headphones on and I listened to John Williams' score for The Last Crusade. And what really surprised me was kind of what you have just said, which is there's reams and reams of music in the film, which I kind of hadn't noticed. And playing it back, I kind of realised, I sort of recognise this, but I don't think this really went into my brain when I was watching the film. It was just reinforcing what I was watching so clearly. That's absolutely when music works well on screen, is when it's not really drawing attention to itself. In the same way that the best editing. Well, I think we had a chat about this when we were doing our Best Film of the Year show a few months ago. We were saying movies where they win an award for editing should really kind of be embarrassed, because the best kind of editing is not noticeable. If the editing has drawn attention to itself, it's taking you out of the experience of watching the film. And it's just the same with the music, I think. You may come out of the movie tapping your toes and having enjoyed the music, but I think when you are there in the moment, the music is just part of that symphony of the arts, which is cinema. So I commonly come away with an impression of the film, but not the score. There was speaking of scores, there's one other film which I will mention, which is this evening we watched the trailer for Dune 2, or Dunk as my children call it, not Dune, because that's what the writing looks like. And I remember I took my daughter to go and see the first Dune film, not the David Lynch one, but the most recent one. At the cinema, it's been a couple of years ago now, and the soundtrack for that is just kind of, as far as I can record, it's just very, very loud, distorted noises played at full volume. Yeah. That's kind of the whole soundtrack, and with that kind of soundtrack, you can feel that it's it's supposed to have this sort of this very fundamental sort of barbaric effect through the sheer force of volume. But I'm not sure it really succeeds as a soundtrack outside of being used as a as a sort of a backdrop to some visuals. So, yeah, there are soundtracks which get praised and draw attention to, which I think are more about effect than they are about music. But I don't know. I'm not a particularly accomplished musician, so I don't think I can point the finger. Steve, are you available to compose soundtracks? Are you interested in getting back into that?
Wow, I am so rusty and so out of practice with that.
I'll take that as a yes. You'll get a call from my agent.
I was going to say, I think that, one of the best uses of music in film is actually some certain concert films that I think really are great, because you get to see, entire performances or in some cases recording sessions and things like that. The Pink Floyd film that they did at the theater at Pompeii, it mesmerized me as a kid. I was just watching this thing that Brandy Carlisle did at someone's house in Laurel Canyon in Los Angeles, which was amazing. And so I think maybe that's the ideal way to see music in film, is when it's really that intentional. I agree with you both. It's like, if it's done really well for a narrative film, it doesn't distract your attention. But sometimes it's nice to just draw an attention to an artist and really explore their music in a concert film or some sort of a real documentary, I guess.
Yeah, my favorite concert movie is Purple Rain. We did talk about concert movies, and I can't remember whether I mentioned it or not, because it's kind of a concert movie, but it's kind of not. But all the most exciting bits of the film are just Prince and the Revolution playing, and then the acting bits are sandwiched in between for you to catch your breath between performances.
He actually has a more strictly concert film that I forget the title, but I saw it a few years ago. It's not very good. It's not nearly as good as Purple Rain.
It's the tour for Sign of the Times, isn't it?
Yeah, Sign of the Times. Yeah.
I don't know. Is it called One Night in Paris, or
I think it's called Sign of the Times.
Maybe it's just called Sign of the Times. Yeah, I remember kind of seeing that as well and being very disappointed. And I think clearly the idea was that someone had realised that the most exciting bits of Purple Rain were the live concert bits. Let's just do all live concert bits, but it just doesn't really work as well. Yeah, it is. Yep, Sign of the Times. Yep, exactly, with a peace sign in there too. Remember that Prince started using some symbols. Because the artist has grown beyond the alphabet, yes.
I like old Broadway and fairies on a string. I like old Broadway. Steve, we caught great songs on film, like things like Extortion. Always that song always makes me happy. Gay Truck Driver, Drag Queen Cowgirl. Some of your hits are there, and I'm glad we've got them on video for posterity.
Yeah, I was happy to listen to those again. And what I really enjoyed most, one of the things I really enjoyed watching that movie again was the end keys, and this was the Eastern European polka band that Andres and I played in. And so there's a little clip in there, and that's Andres playing percussion with like some black and white footage with some Eastern European music, and Lima Geigelis is playing violin and Dwayne Webster on bass. And I was really happy to hear that music again.
That was fun. That's definitely one of my favorite moments too. Just a quick moment, and that's my only time on screen. It's a good thing that we put you on screen a lot more than me. But is there one song that you really love seeing other than that? One of your own songs that you liked the performance of and really like to see on screen?
Yeah, it's a song called River Road, and a friend of mine in Connecticut who I lost touch with, she wrote the lyrics for that. And to me, that song's aged really well. I was happy to hear that, because I kind of forgot about it, because I didn't write it, so I kind of forgot about it. But then hearing it again, I thought, wow, that's a really nice song. And I think, I think where I'm at in my life right now, I'd want to write songs that, I don't know, more from the heart, and try to be a little more inspirational, right? Make people feel good rather than being cynical or snarky, which I think I was maybe trying to be a little bit too cynical or snarky back in the day. So in my old age comes wisdom, and I do want to approach songwriting again, and definitely do it from a different direction.
I mean, I think the other thing is that the world of 2023 is kind of different to the world of 1998. I mean, we've talked about this a bit before on the podcast, and this kind of millennial ennui that seeped into all media in like the sort of mid to late 90s. There's something about 90s cinema, and then the way that it changed, and the way this is my kind of pet theory about the way one of the ways that the world changed in 9/11. So I think the world we live in now maybe kind of needs different songs to the world of 1998.
I was just going to say I agree. I love that scene very much because that felt like a really natural moment. We were just on this radio show with they were kids to us. They were probably like 20-year-olds having their college radio show. I don't think they knew what they had coming with Steve sitting down and doing live radio. But I love some of the camera work in there too. It's really simple and basic, but it just kind of follows the story and shows you how Steve plays his guitar. Because I followed the lead from the amplifier and the wire, and then down to the guitar. And Steve used to prop up the guitar on top of a guitar case. It's just the strangest little setup. So then you could see him hitting first before you actually we panned up and showed him singing as well. So it's one of my favorite moments too. And again, I think it's because it's everything together. It's a live performance. It's got non-actors in there just being themselves. It's got a song, and it's just one of my favorite moments as well. So I'm glad you hit on that one also. I should just say thank you to Steve right now because our listeners don't know this, and I'll thank the listeners too. But thanks, Steve, for coming and remembering stuff and sharing your memories. Thanks for the listeners. Some of you may have seen Debutante. You can see it at our YouTube channel if you'd like. And thanks to James for sitting through this again, and both of you for watching the film.
Steve, pleasure to meet you. Please get back on the guitar. Because world needs more songs. World needs more upright guitar. God damn.
I think you're encouraging me. Yeah, thank you. Maybe that's the encouragement I needed to get onto Spotify. But thank you, James and Andres, for inviting me onto the Popcorn Corner. It's given me a really nice chance to look back at this film that Andres and I did 25 years ago. It was a lot of fun to make. I know that, and it's given me kind of a different perspective to look back on it.
I'll be putting you on my playlist.
Thank you so much for coming.
The river's running to the sand, wildflower, sugarcane. The wind whispers in my good ear. Maybe you're the only one to bring me here. You bring me down to the river, down to the river road. You bring me down to the river, down to the river, down to the river road. Baby, I wanna walk all night when the stars are low. You bring me down that river road. For August moon and your favorite bottle of wine. Baby, we can get lost just for a little while. Just for a little while. Just for a little while. I go down to the river, down that river road. I go down to the river, down that river road. Take me down to the river, take me to the river.